Hello, hello.
Hello.
Good to see you again. This has been far too long,
Yeah, it's been a long time. So,
and a lot
tell
has
us,
happened in the meantime. Starting
spill the
with
beans.
starting with BetaNet version 2. We launched it. It gave us real actionable feedback. We actually excuse me, not version 2. Version 2 we'd already covered in our previous conversation from several months ago, but version 3 was launched since then, wherein we um, tried to set the target block interval to 5 minutes. And it turns out that that's not a good idea, at least not with the current proving speeds. Because what ends up happening when you publish a transaction, you need to tailor the transaction to the current block. Then you need to start proving it. And you need to finish the proof before the next block is in order to publish it and have a reasonable likelihood of getting that transaction confirmed. And so the relation of the time spent proving to the time that it takes for a block to appear, that's a big factor in the likelihood of your transaction being confirmed. And on BetaNet version 3, that ratio was just too big to have a reasonable likelihood of your transaction being confirmed. And
Hmm.
so we tried 5 minutes and we decided that 10 minutes is better. Um, yeah, there were some personal developments on my side, which may explain in part why there was such a delay in having more of these podcasts.
Another launch, I believe.
Another launch, yes. My office has been transformed into a baby changing table. Um, so be it. Um, so since launching BetaNet version 3, we also launched Mainnet. Mainnet is live and has been since February 11. Um, and yeah, there are a bunch of things to say here. Um, Most embarrassingly, we got we launched a version of the source code in which the default network was still Betanet. We said here is version 1.0, or 0.1.0 rather, and it would try to connect to peers on Betanet. And the reason was, even though we had set the default network to main, the default command line argument for the network was still stuck on beta. So we changed it in one place, but it actually had to be changed in several places.
Hmm.
Um, and another thing that went wrong shortly after launch was we managed to isolate ourselves from the network. Um, I don't know exactly how it happened, but it has to do with firewalls and nodes not being able to initiate connections, other nodes not being able to receive them, and probably there was some um, unintentional banning going on as well. But at some point, it was just me connected to my co-founder's node, and that was our view of the network. While meanwhile, on Telegram, we saw that plenty of people were connecting to each other.
Interesting. Okay.
Um, yeah, so network issues.
How did that get resolved?
In the end, we modified the commands with which we ran our nodes to include the IPs of some of the nodes we saw on Telegram, and we also launched a new node that was guaranteed to be well connected, starting a new virtual private server and all. And I also realized that there were firewall settings on my Bootstrap node, which I resolved the next day. Um, so uh, the issue was resolved through a bunch of countermeasures.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I wrote a short summary of things that went wrong in the course of launch, and that's one of the articles on the website now. I can't remember everything, but as my brother likes to say, time is the best filter. Um, so what else happened?
Hard fork.
Hard fork, yes. We noticed that people were complaining when they tried to initiate transactions that had 30, 32, 34 sometimes inputs, and that wouldn't go through. Those transactions would be absorbed into blocks that those initiators were composing, and those blocks turned out to be invalid because they were larger than the block maximum size. And that was unexpected because we did expect the number of inputs to be, I don't know, 200, 1,000, that order of magnitude, or those orders of magnitudes, but 30 was way less than we had expected. And upon digging, it seems as though we underestimated the cost of the membership proofs of inputs. So, since Neptune Cash is still a privacy preserving cryptocurrency, while we do have UTXOs, they are encrypted into different formats depending on whether they are on the input or on the output side of a transaction. And so you get a bunch of encryptions on the input side of a transaction. And then the question is, how do we know that these inputs really correspond to UTXOs that have been confirmed by some previous transaction? And the way you know this is because of the membership proof. It's a little more technically complicated than that, but the long story short is you produce a proof of this. And this membership proof turns out to be larger than we expected, in part because people were spending old UTXOs, which they're allowed to do, but back when we were doing back of the envelope calculations, were expecting that by and large, most of the UTXOs people are spending are going to be new. And then the membership proofs are a lot shorter. But these big transactions that were causing the block limit to be exceeded, they were presumably, we don't really know for sure, consolidating mining gains across several different days, weeks in the past. And so then the size of these membership proofs keeps stacking up. So we decided as an immediate countermeasure to increase the maximum block size. So this should be good for, I think, 200 inputs. The block size was the block size limit was 2 megabytes. Now it's 8 megabytes, and this should be enough for 200 inputs without any other changes um, besides the maximum size. That said, we are planning and working on representing these membership proofs in a smarter way because there's a lot of repeated data and we don't need to repeat data. We need to represent it irredundantly, and we even already have an algorithm for doing exactly what we need to do with it. And at the time we decided what's the benefit versus the cost of implementing this algorithm, and we decided that the benefit didn't outweigh the cost at the time, and it turns out that calculation was wrong. So we have that algorithm. We need to implement it and tie it together with existing infrastructure, and then we will be able to represent inputs much more efficiently, and then we will be able to pack a lot more inputs into blocks as well. And that's going to constitute another hard fork. And so that's definitely coming, but it requires a lot more engineering than just changing the block size limit.
And so, and how does the team feel about having to resort to a hard fork?
Um, I certainly didn't like it. In the eyes of the rest of the team, well, opinions were um, varied.
I, I
Uh,
remember I remember when we spent some time mapping out like the future of Neptune when I visited you guys. Then that was, I think you set that as a milestone. Like at this and this date, we will have performed one hard fork, and I was a bit bewildered by that because it didn't sound like sort of a positive goal, but it was like something that I think you said it was like more or less inevitable.
we were definitely planning to hard fork in upgrades to Triton VM because we can get a faster prover. It just takes some engineering effort, and once that engineering effort is done, there's no way to integrate it into Neptune Cache without a hard fork. So a hard fork for upgrading the prover was always in the books. Um, we may have signaled or discussed or communicated that hard forks were in the books for other features, uh, performance upgrades, but certainly concrete technical upgrades. Whereas this hard fork does not meet that criterion. It's really a very small hard fork in terms of number of places of the code that it touches. Um, and it was not planned. It was not planned and deployed in perhaps in a rush, you could say, um, in response to demand, as well as acknowledging error that we had made, which was not calculate the size of inputs properly beforehand.
And has the hard fork remedied the situation?
Certainly, nobody has complained since about not being able to get their about exceeding the block size. They have complained about not being able to get their transactions confirmed, but that's for a different reason. And by the way, those complaints were resolved in the end.
Okay.
Um, Long story short, on that note, it still has to do with the ratio between time spent proving and block time. And it's that ratio is smaller now, but it's still non-zero. So from time to time, you still have to try multiple times to get your transaction confirmed.
And so, what other observations do you have post mainnet launch?
We were very pleasantly surprised to discover 3 weeks in that we had been listed. We are still listed on safetrade.com. And so investors who want to buy Neptune Cash, they
Wow.
can go there and buy it. And miners who want to sell, they can go there and sell it. And previously, it was a recurring question, particularly when talking to investors, what are your plans for getting listed? And our answer was, well, we don't really have plans. This is a question that's up to the market. And if push comes to shove and we really need to, then we will build a cross-chain atomic swap because getting listed is this lawyerly game where you pay the listing fees and then you do the um, uh, integration and then play back and forth, and it can take a while, and lawyers need to be involved, and it's just this hassle that we didn't really want to get involved in because at our core we are engineers. We like to build stuff. We don't really like to comply with the requirements of external parties. Um, And yeah, I guess that's exactly what Safe Trade did. They complied with the requirements imposed by the Neptune Cache software. Hats off to pull that off. It's a difficult thing, I'd say, for anyone, but they managed to do that within 3 weeks. So that's two hats
Wow,
off
yeah.
in my eyes. Um, and on a related
Congrats
note,
on that as well. That's quite a milestone.
yes. Uh, well, I'd like to take credit, but obviously all the credit goes to the folks over at Safe Trade. Um, and unfortunately, on a very related note, the price took a nosedive, and yeah, that's not so nice. But
So, what is the price?
right now, the price is hovering around 60 cents, I think. So that's annoying. I can imagine that most of our investors are angry now because they got in at a much more expensive price.
Okay, did they?
Yeah. But it's
That's
annoying for them,
amazing.
but it's also annoying for us because how do we raise funds going forward?
But I see NPT. Is that your tracker?
That's our tracker, yeah.
It's 1.1 now.
Oh well, it shows that we have upside potential.
Wow. Okay.
Um, yeah, it looks. On another related note, we were very positively surprised by the boom in the difficulty. So it turns out there's a lot of mining power, guessing power specifically being directed at the network, and that's great. But as of 1 week or so, maybe 2 weeks ago, um, it looks as though FPGAs have entered the market because we are hearing from miners, self-declared miners, that their GPUs don't mine much anymore. And in their eyes, the only possible explanation is that somebody has figured out an FPGA algorithm and is deploying that to good use.
Wow.
And
Okay.
that's also their explanation as to why the price is taking a nosedive, because it's so much cheaper for the FPGA miner to get these coins. He just wants to get the profit immediately, and he might as well sell them at a price below which the GPU miners can mine them.
Wow. Interesting. And all of that sort of happening, without knowing the people involved and this kind of stuff. It's all
Correct.
based
Well,
on
we
signals.
know some folks. Some folks we knew beforehand were going to mine, did end up mining, and some folks we met afterwards. But most of the miners we don't know, and certainly most of the guessing power, we have no idea where they are or who they are.
Hmm. Okay, cool. But no, I think that's a major milestone. It's sort of yeah, type of like market validation kind of. It's platform
Well,
is
the
listing you.
market validation would have been more intense if the price had gone up, but I guess you can't have a cake and eat
Hey,
it too.
it's early days,
It
right?
is early
So
days, and I mean, there are still complaints coming from people who try to initiate transactions and discover that they have to try again and again and again and again before it finally gets confirmed. Um, and it has to do with the speed of proving, which we are fixing. And so down the line, we will have faster provers, and the you will get your transaction confirmed more easily. And there are a ton of obstacles that we are busy engineering out of the way to make a clear path for cryptocurrency with the thing we promised, which is scalable privacy. We don't have it yet, and so once we do have it, I'm sure the price will. adjust course.
But as an engineer at heart, that's not what you and your team are focused on, I'm sure.
No, but we're also running a company that's paying our salaries, and we need to ensure that those salaries keep getting paid because otherwise we can't do the engineering work anymore. And so we do have a bit of a pickle here.
Right, and so you're talking mostly about the you want investors, more investors to come in, or you want existing investors to have a ROI, or what are you
Well, the
imagining?
existing investors' ROI is going to come from the price picking up
Hmm.
beyond the price that they got in at. Um, but we're nearing the end of our runway, and so we do need more money to come in,
Hmm.
and we haven't quite figured out a way yet, but I'm sure we will.
I'm sure you will too. I think you've got great cards, especially being already listed, and
That was the biggest hurdle in getting investors in the first time.
yeah, and I'm sure if one has gone through that, has jumped through that hoop, others will soon follow, and then there will be like open source wallets that are usable and that, or like integrations that allow people to hold Neptune easily. So
Exactly. That's another one of the complaints we get a lot is that the hardware wallet, excuse me, hardware wallet, the terminal user interface to the only wallet that currently exists is too difficult to use. And yeah, if you're not comfortable using the terminal, good luck using it. But we're on it. We're gonna fix it. It's gonna be a very smooth user experience at some point in the future. Just
mhm.
take note of the fact that it's an engineering effort that is underway.
Cool. All right, maybe a good note to
Yeah,
what's it called to finish up.
finish up with. Sounds good. Take care.
All right, take care.
Bye bye.